Frank, good afternoon. Sunday, Mother's Day. Hope you're doing well. It's Everyman BJJ podcast with Frank and Noah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mother's Day is, for, I guess there's a lot of people, they live home, they live at home with their moms still, the jujitsu guys. So they have someone caring for them. Everyone needs that support. I think guys out there who are living with their parents, saving money, there's ups and there's an upside to that. There's a downside to it, of course. We've all had people in our lives who have lived with their mothers, but I would say that, I lost my mother, weirdly, the day after my birthday, 16 years ago. And, I was living in New York, and a cascade of emotions came upon me, not just then, but over time. And I missed her. But I started also missing my Texas roots and missing a lot of those things. So, it's a bit of a bittersweet, to have Mother's Day. But for everyone around you who is a mother, I'm sure, you can relate. It's good to just give them good vibes. My mother, rest in peace. She was a great mother. Gave me a lot of challenges growing up, and made me into who I am today. So, anyways, to all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, my mom is still alive, and I do want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. The older I get, the more I appreciate the role of mothers, the role of fathers. These are hard roles. I mean, I think most people will go to their grave if they have kids. They'll go to their grave thinking, well, I could have done a better job. I could have spent more time with them. I could have did this. I could have did that. When you talk about woulda, coulda, shoulda, it's not just professional success. It's not just romantic love where you lose love and you think, oh, what could I have done? If only I'd thought of the right words to say, if only I'd done whatever. When it comes to kids, a lot of people, this is why I don't buy in, Noah. People talk about, whether you're an athlete or whatever you're doing, oh, I don't have any regrets, live with no regrets. I think that's total BS. Mm-hmm. I think the reality is it's total BS. I don't know where it started, who started it, but it's like the most inhumane, fakest thing ever. I have no regrets. I'll tell you when you're going to have no regrets in this life. You're going to have no regrets if you die really young and you just didn't have a chance to live. You die really young, you might die with no regrets because you just didn't cross your mind. But once you start hitting 35, 40, 45, 50, once you start touching those years, and if you're sober, if you're drugged out of your mind, or you wake up every day and you drink a lot of alcohol or something, you might not have any damn regrets because you're just not in your right mind, right? So, but if you're in your right mind and you're sober and you hit 40 and you hit 45 and you hit 50, part of the beauty of life is that right around 35, 40, 45, 50, I don't care who you are, there's about a 90-some% chance life's going to smack you upside the head like never before, like with the steel chair. It is coming. The steel chair is going to say life. Like, remember professional wrestling? Remember they used to hit each other with steel chairs? It's going to have these big words, L-I-F-E, on it. It's going to be life. It's going to be like Andre the Giant holding the chair, and it's just going to smash you upside the head, and it's going to get your attention. And that's the beautiful thing, is that finally, a lot of us who've been kicking the can down the road, or I'll get to that whenever, whatever it is, the dream or the whatever we've been kicking down the road, I'll get to that, I'll do that when there's more time, I'll do that. And then you get to be 35, 40, 45, 50, you have a divorce, some people you love die on you, you have some health problems, the dreams you had that are still in you won't go away, and you're not any closer to achieving them.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit rock bottom, and then you're like, oh my God. And the voice of regret, it's not a final thing, but the voice of regret comes and says, Frank, are you ever going to do that? Are you ever going to get that right? Are you ever going to be a better blank? Are you ever going to get around to that? Why haven't you done that? And all the messy things in our life, right? All the messy things that we don't like, well, oh my God. And we avoid them. But at some point, we have to wake up and we have to be like, okay, I have to face that. I have to face, in a lot of ways. I'm talking about most of us. I'm not talking about everybody, but most of us, it's like we wake up one day and we're like, oh my God, look at the mess that is my life. Look at the mess that is my life, man. Oh my God. And then we're thinking, well, who's going to come to clean it?
Yeah.
Who's going to help clean my mess up?
Yeah.
Do I even want to clean my mess up? Is it worth it? It would take it seems like it would take a Herculean effort to clean my mess up.
And it usually
so then
does.
We're like, part of us is still like, well, wait, let's just leave the mess. And maybe the mess will go away in 2, 3, 4 more years pass by.
Yeah.
And the mess is there and it got a little bigger. Oh my God, the mess
more complex.
What the heck?
Yes.
Yeah. So this notion of like regrets, a lot of us have them. And I think especially parents, because it's such a thankless job. Parenting is such a thankless job. You know, Noah, you're helping, you've got a little girl there. I've got a 12-year-old son. I've coached. Parenting is, I want to interject religion for a second, because I know you're not a religious guy, and that's fine. And I think being religious is, it's gotten a bad name, and partly it's gotten a bad name because it deserves a bad name, because a lot of bad, terrible things have been done in the name of religion. So there's a lot that's like icky about religiosity, right? But you know that I'm a Christian guy and I have Christian beliefs. There's one story, there's one metaphor that whether or not you believe in Christ, or you think Christ was this great figure, this great character, this great human, there's a story in there about the lepers. So Christ, remember in the Bible, Christ goes and heals the lepers. And Christ heals something like 10 different lepers. So lepers is like, they have all the rashes, the really bad. I mean, it's like the most gross thing you could see. You see a leper, you're like, oh my God, run. Like, people are scared of COVID now. Leprosy, people were like, you could catch leprosy from another person. And, they believe people who had leprosy were being punished by God. They did some terrible things. And so God was punishing with this, just the ugliest, most deformed skin, and painful, and leprosy, just horrible, right? And so Christ, who was into like, hey, I want to help, I will serve the least of people, goes to the lepers and heals these people with leprosy. And supposedly it's like something like 10 people with leprosy or so he heals, 10. Guess how many said thank you, according to the Bible, according to the Bible story? 1. 1 in 10 said, thank you so much for what you just did. 1 in 10. The other 9 were like, all right, see ya. And in some ways, parenting, like I don't know why I think of that metaphor. It's like parenting, it's higher than 1 in 10 appreciation, but it's like, oh man, like you do so much for kids, or our parents do so much for us. And the thank yous a lot of times don't come as freely. And even when they hit adulthood and they're 20 or 25, it's like we still don't realize, the light bulb still doesn't go off how much how much parents sacrifice for us, how much they went the extra mile, how hard parenting is, how much they sacrifice in terms of their career, their athletic goals, their whatever, their trips to be there with us, to drive us to practices. So anyway, all I'm getting at here is it's a largely thankless job. And the older I get every year, especially now that I am a parent and I realize how hard it is. And I just like, thank you so much to the moms out there, because it really is. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world. It's one of the most important jobs in the world. When we talk about Noah, we talk about making the world a better place, right? And we're talking about coaches, teachers, and parents. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about mentors, teachers, coaches, and parents. that's really where it starts. It doesn't start even with a meme. It starts with coaches, mentors, teachers, and parents. And that's the real grunt work. And a lot of time there's no glory in it. There's not a lot of glory in it. But if we want a better society, people are running around. And, you know, if we want a better society, we need more people, including me. I need to do a better job. We need more people that are better teachers, that are better parents, that are going to be more selfless. We need more of that. And we need to, I think, including me, I'm including myself in this, to totally appreciate. The older I get, I know that I speak for you too. The older I get, the more I'm like, wow, like, thank goodness for my mom or for my friends' moms, and like people that were so nice and so sweet, and just little things that they did, you know, to encourage you. Thank God. And the teachers too, including the, you know, the teachers out there that just see something in you and pick you up and tell you you're special at something, Noah. Like that's what Mother's Day is to me. So on behalf of us here, I mean, thank you so much to the moms out there. It's maybe the most important work on the planet.
I totally agree. You know, I just to want to rotate a little bit, pivot a little bit on the conversation here. You talk about having that support. You know, you talk about leprosy, my neck starts itching. But you talk about that. Yeah. You talk about that support network, and you know, families are really a good, huge part of that. I want to. This touches on it because, you know, I talked before about the complex logistics that are required when you're living in New York and you want to train jiu-jitsu regularly. With, you know, with the keeping your you know, carrying your workout gear back and forth and planning it all. Mother's Day is a practice, and is a gratitude practice. And so that's part of, you know, that's what kind of keeps you great. 2 years ago, as I was walking out of Henzo's, we have a guy who swabs the mats, keeps the whole place clean, and he is around the holidays, and you know, I before the outbreak of, like, there was like some kind of contagious, you know, something about conjunctivitis or something that got into people's eyes at Henzo's. Before then, you know, there's a very largely thankless job that this guy does. He's a purple belt, and he keeps the mats clean. You know, and part of my gratitude practice is to do unexpected things for people who are the most deserving. You know, just to pivot this. And so I would, you know, every year when I'm training at Enzo's, I go and I give him money around the holidays, because that's a tough job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a thankless job. You know, speaking of other thankless jobs, and I also would think, like when I'm living in New York, there weeks go by when I'm having a heavy workload. I have, you know, dry cleaners, and they do my laundry for me too. And these are, you know, I talked to the guy, and he and his wife run the business, and you know, he was a statistician in South Korea and decided to come to the U.S. and he and his wife spent years building this business. But our support team matters a lot, and so having that gratitude practice, whether, you know, the mothers in our life, do small things, and you don't want to miss those. So, anyways, there's a lot of people who you depend upon as an athlete in this sport, and it can be as small as someone having going through and making sure all the lights are on, you know, at the academy, you know, making sure that all the equipment's there, up and running right, you know, with the ventilation systems, or with making sure the showers are there working, and they're all sanitized and clean, free of mold and those kind of things. Those little things matter a lot, and it's important to have that gratitude practice in place.
You know, remember Tom DeJarnette, who we had
Oh
on
yeah.
our show, you know, a few months ago. Tom DeJarnette was a commanding officer in the Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 1, and he recently retired, and Tom is a good friend. And when I talked to Tom, and we're looking at like basically how do you produce or how do you create a Navy SEAL? And we would delve into the childhoods of the kids. And Tom said to me, he said, Frank, I don't have any scientific evidence to support this, but I will tell you that anecdotally, and he's been with the SEALs for what, 20 some years. He's like, anecdotally, the thing we see most often in the SEALs is they have very strong moms. It's the moms more than the dads. Now that's so counterintuitive. Like, wow, you know, you would think like dad's example is going to be more likely to produce and create that warrior thing with the Navy SEALs, right? Tom's experience in the trenches is like, it's the moms. It's how the moms handle the kids. It's the moms instilling the confidence. It's the moms, instead of saying, no, can't do that. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get dirty. No. Instead of that, it's the opposite. So it's interesting anyway. That's just an aside.
Yeah.
I remember very distinctly Tom telling me that, you know.
Is there a particular facet that he was referring to? You said that the successful Buds sailors were.
Yeah, he was just saying who makes it through. That what he sees with most of the Navy SEALs, he sees that the mom's influence looms larger than the father's. The overall, like that grit, that resilience, that whatever it is they have, that the mom's influence is even more impactful, seemingly more impactful than the father's.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. There's another question I wanted to ask you if you had time, and that's, you know, there's certain, so in our sport, you know, we do things, and, you know, like our training for on the mat training, you know, me, I've had some injuries and some time off. I wanted to ask your opinion of like training for an endurance sport, like a sprint triathlon, which is the lowest amount of distance to cover. You know, it's the least amount for swimming, for running and cycling. What's your, and that requires a lot of time to train, okay? And which means your support network, you know, the mother in your life, you know, you have to lean on your family a bit. Whereas, you know, another, you know, if I was only training for like a 5K, that's less, you know, it's less of a commitment. But
how many miles? How many miles is that, Noah, roughly?
Oh, you put me on the spot here. Let me look at my notes.
Just give us an estimate. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just what's a range?
So it's a half-mile swim. I mean, Ironman is 2.4 miles, which, I mean, that's on the other side of the spectrum.
Okay.
And
But we're talking about you know, a good 2 hours of straight whatever, and at least 2 hours of whether you're cycling, you're running, or you're in the water. You're half of that's probably going to be at least 2 hours of that, right?
Right, yeah. So I wanted to get your take on you doing. You know, obviously you're going to need a good support system for an endurance type of sport. But what is your opinion like? You know, like me, I've not been training regularly, and my cardio is off because, I mean, I've been working a lot this past year.
So
how would that impact, you know, for, you know?
Yeah, this is a great question.
It's something that
I'm about to go off on a monologue. So
oh yeah, I know I was teasing you earlier about the monologue thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It might be a 5 to 8 minute monologue, so heads up. But I'm gonna
make it 25.
I'm gonna pull back the layers on this because it's a really good question.
Thank you.
And I think about it now because I'm injured too, which is okay. If I get in really good shape from swimming, running, whatever, how much of that carries over to my jiu-jitsu? Well, the first thing is, well, how long have you done jiu-jitsu? The longer you've done jiu-jitsu or wrestling or combat sports, the easier it's going to be if you take, 6 months off, a year off, the easier it is to come back, because those muscles, especially if you started when you were young, those muscles are used to it. So they can come back so much quicker. They have muscle memory, all the pathways and the neurotransmitters. They already know the road. When you've already put in your 5,000, your 10,000 hours, your 15,000 hours, sometimes you can take longer off and it comes back quicker. Even if you haven't been doing jiu-jitsu, maybe you've been swimming. So that's one consideration. If somebody comes from triathlete to jiu-jitsu and they've never done jiu-jitsu and they've never done wrestling and they've never done judo and all that, whatever, then, they're going to have, they might be surprised how much muscle fatigue they're going to have, because they're like, holy crap, like I'm in great shape, but my forearms are baked, and it can take months or years to really get that up to where you feel like, okay, I was a super endurance swimmer, but now I've got this incredible endurance on the mat. The other thing that goes into that too, Noah, is breathing goes into that. So a lot of breathing, the reason that breathing goes into that, we see Hickson Gracie being the most visible example of just breathing. And breathing is so important to our cardiovascular, to our energy, to our efficiency. And breathing corresponds to our state of mind. Breathing tells you a lot of times, it tells you a lot about the person's state of mind. Are they afraid? Are they anxious? Is the moment too big for them? Are they too nervous? And when they are, their heart rate goes up, their breathing becomes more labored. So a lot of it might depend too, if you're doing all of this, the cycling, the swimming. If you come over to jiu-jitsu and you're calm and you've got good breathing, I think you're going to, it's going to convert very well, actually, especially since you've trained before. It's going to convert well. What happens for a lot of people is they're in great shape at something else, but then they get on the mat and they get spazzy and they get like a fish out of water and they're nervous. Someone grabs them and they just freak out. And then they're like, oh my God, I'm tired after 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, because it's not a physical thing. A lot of fatigue in the fight game, especially when you see UFC and the fighters are tired in the first round. Yeah, some of that can be that Diego Sanchez is fighting somebody and the pace is just ridiculous. But a lot of times when you see fighter fatigue, it's not always the pace of the fight. Some of that is mental, it's psychological, that the fighter got too nervous. The fighter's heart rate is too high. The fighter is overreacting. The fighter is overly anxious. The fighter is intimidated or a little bit scared of whatever, of being hit or whatever. It's not, the fight's not going their way. The psychological response will affect the heart rate and will affect the breathing. And then that will be like, well, damn, I trained 3 months. I trained so hard for this. I was in the best shape of my career, and I got tired in the second round, or I got tired through whatever. And because there's a lot of different layers to the cake. How long had the person been training in their life, in their career? How long did they take off? Which sports are they doing that might convert better? Like for me, swimming does convert very well to my cardio in jiu-jitsu and wrestling and in MMA. Swimming converted very well. So for me, since swimming is very hard, my body doesn't like swimming, I don't float well. Whenever I go in the water and challenge myself with swimming, with even doing, running sprints in the water, that always helped my cardio because it came very hard for me. So I would always recommend everybody out there swimming. Swimming, there's a lot of emphasis on breathing with swimming. There's a lot of emphasis on breathing. So, there's a couple of things I would say. One is how long have you been training jiu-jitsu? The longer, the better, and the easier it'll be to come back. The other is, if you're going to take time off too and do other things, I would say focus on some of your weaknesses. If you don't have as much leg power, focus on your leg power. Like get stronger at something. If your grip's not as strong, come back. Even if you're not doing jiu-jitsu stuff, focus on your grip. Like focus on your weaknesses as well. In addition to keeping a cardio base, start to work those muscles. If you've had neck problems, get your neck stronger. Those can be good opportunities in the off season. Even if you took a year off, get stronger at some of the problem areas, your hamstrings, whatever, your neck, your grip, some of the neglected muscles. Because a lot of times when you're training in season, it can be hard to train your neck because your neck just got to work out on the mat. You don't want to do the extra. So your neck it's harder to get your neck strong above and beyond because, or your legs, because after jiu-jitsu practice, you're so zonked that you don't have the leg power to really get your hamstrings or your quad stronger. And then you're thinking, well, I could get my quads stronger before jiu-jitsu practice, but then you're worried, oh, my quads are going to be drained for jiu-jitsu practice, and it's going to hurt my performance, right? A lot of people would worry about that. So the off season, if you took 6 months or a year off, it's like, okay, give me some focus on some other muscles. And when you come back, like I've had that happen where I worked a lot on my grip power. I missed jiu-jitsu practice for like 6 months, being injured, whatever, work stuff. Came back and I started getting more guillotine chokes. Why? Because I had emphasized my grips. I was getting a better bite. I had more horsepower to finish chokes just by that. It's like I was getting more chokes. I was finishing more chokes coming back even after the layoff than before because I had a chance to emphasize that muscle. Whereas if I'm training jiu-jitsu, I might not want to drain my grip as much because I'm thinking I'm going to go train jiu-jitsu later today or I'm going to train jiu-jitsu tomorrow and I don't want my grip to be dead from the workout I'm about to do or the hangs, right? So there can be, this is sort of my thinking on the kind of stuff that you're talking about.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you're sharing this. I wanted to ask because right now where I'm at in my situation, I'd like to I'd like to work on my heart, and I'd like to work on the cardio. It's something I've hated. And so I'm like, that mentality of let me go after my weaknesses. And the endurance sport, I missed going out for long runs like I used to when I was young. Used to go out for long runs, run 3 to 5 miles. And it's been a while since I've done it. It's been 20 years since I've gotten out and run like that. And I like to have that available to me again as I just turned 49. And I know it's like, oh, it's different. It's different. It's different energy systems with an endurance sport. But, to me, I'm a big guy. I don't care about to me, I don't care about being worn out from a workout and then go jiu-jitsu. See, to me, I don't care. I would, if my joints could take the damage from me lifting weights, I would rather go lift weights, have a snack, and then go do jits. Because to me, jits is cardio. It's not about, it's not physically, it's not like lifting weights or, I don't go to jits for the workout as I do the technique training. So I can be totally gassed out and have the most blissful jiu-jitsu sparring session ever. One of the big things for me is gassing out. It's gassing out with the big heavies. Guys my size and up. It's just I'm having to move so much. Either I'm having to move my meat around, or I have to, use some leverage to move them around. So it's just something I thought of exploring and getting into a bit.
So Noah, when we look at the ingredients of cardiovascular, of having good cardio, number one, you just start with breathing, right? You start with just controlling your breathing. And the more that you can control your breathing, the lower the heart rate, the better the output, the better the mind clarity. And then, are you still hearing me okay, Noah?
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah, you're good.
You still hearing me?
Yes.
I see it's frozen.
You're
hearing me okay?
Yeah, you're great. You're fine. Yes, you're great.
Okay.
That's unfortunate you can't hear me.
I'm having problems hearing you.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah, I hear you just fine, Frank. You're great. Yeah.
So so the breathing is one, and then the efficiency. I mean, when we talk about just being technical and being efficient, right? The economy of motion. Obviously, the more technical we are, but then the other element of cardio too is our opponent. I mean, our opponent has something to do with our cardiovascular output. Like a lot of times, if they're really good, or they're just as good as us, or they're better than us, and maybe they're stronger than us, and maybe they put a fast pace, or maybe they're 2 steps ahead of us, they can impact our cardio. They can affect our cardio by, so it's not always just us. It's that if you get someone else who's in even better shape than you, or they're better technically, or they're even stronger, or they're putting a really fast pace, or they're 2 or 3 steps ahead, I mean, it can really challenge your cardio. The good thing about challenging your cardio is normally you get in better shape. But one thing I'm going to suggest, because I know how hard you work. I know you work a lot of hours. You're very good at what you do, and you sit in a chair a lot. And again, there was a story in UCLA. It was like 15 years ago, and the headline was basically to the effect of "Sitting is the new smoking." And what that headline meant, sitting is the new smoking, it meant these researchers, these scientific researchers are doing studies. They're like, oh my God, sitting for long periods of time is almost as bad as smoking, right? Like it's terrible for human health. And so what I've said to you, and it's worth saying here, is like for someone that works a lot and has to sit a lot, and maybe they have to take, maybe for whatever reason they're missing a month of jiu-jitsu, 2 months, 3 months, I would just say, get out of your chair and just stand up, even if it's for, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then go down again. Even that little bit of, even if you're sitting down, like I do, if I'm on a plane or something and I'm sitting down, I'm pumping my calves. I'm firing my hamstrings, like squeezing them. I'm contracting the muscles to make the blood flow go. Just getting blood flow in an area. That's why we feel jet lag when we do an airplane. It's not just the travel. It's not just being at 38,000 feet altitude. And yes, you that drains your hydration more. It's not just that. It's just simply you're sitting down. The body becomes sluggish. The blood becomes clumpy, and you're just sitting there and you get tired. You're not getting the same nutrient. You're not getting the same blood flow. You're not getting the same oxygen to the areas of your body. The muscles are just stiffening and tightening. So if you just can get up, one of the best things people could do is if you just get up every half hour, every 35 minutes for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, even if you just have to do, you don't have to do it hard, just do light, just do some shadows, do some squats. It would look weird, but especially if you're at a home office, do it, and then, and then sit back down and do your work. And then go to the fridge, maybe get some water, move, do some calf raises, and then sit back down and work. That may sound like, oh man, like I'm telling you, that'll make a world of difference. And the reason I know is because when I did jiu-jitsu tournaments, a lot of my jiu-jitsu tournaments, so I was doing jiu-jitsu tournaments when there wasn't a tournament every week. We would have to drive 8 hours, 10 hours to California. I drove a lot to California, or, 5 hours to California. And those trips, I didn't like, as an older athlete, I'm like, I don't like sitting down there. And then, my hamstrings tighten up, your back tightens up, everything tightens up. So I was a pain in the butt to drive with, because I would always stop like every hour and 15 minutes. I would stop, I'd do some jumping jacks, I'd do some calf raises, I'd do some little squats, I'd do some shadow boxing, I'd buy something from the store, and then I'd drive another hour, 15, whatever, get out, do it again, stop for 5 minutes. Well, I'm telling you, you're going to show up a little bit fresher that way. If you're 20 years old, who cares? If you're 18, who cares? But I'm saying when you start getting older, it adds up. The blood doesn't flow the same way. The body has more injuries. The body gets stiffer more. So when you start getting older, and especially when you're the person that sits at your desk a lot, these things matter. Or you sit in the car a lot. These things totally matters. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes here and there, getting up, moving, stretching, world of difference over the course of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, world of difference. Little things go a long way. Just little things like that.
That makes total sense. I have another side question about you in particular, which is, do you lift heavy weights as part of, or are you mainly doing body weight exercises?
Well, historically, I have lifted my share of heavy weights going back to being a teenager. Um, I've told people everybody's why is different in this sport, whether you're jiu-jitsu, wrestling. Some people grow up wrestling because they grow up in Ohio or Pennsylvania where everybody wrestles. Everybody loves wrestling, or Iowa. They wrestle because you just wrestle, or you're Khabib in Dagestan. Why did Khabib wrestle? Well, the parents just grab them and they throw them on a wrestling mat, and that's just what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, my story is kind of like a Conor McGregor or a GSP. I mean, I'm 13 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, and a small kid, skinny kid getting picked on. And I was just like, I can't take it anymore. I just couldn't take it. I was terrorized. I was scared. So I was like, oh my God. And it started before I started wrestling. I started lifting weights. There was this old advertisement. You remember Joe Weider, right? Man, Joe Weider was like those bodybuilding magazines. Remember when we were kids? And there was a Joe Weider. Those bodybuilding magazines were like at every store, right? Like instead, like National Enquirer is like every checkout aisle now. But it seemed like everywhere you went in every store, it seemed like there were those Joe Weider, those Muscle Man mags, and you'd see Lou Ferrigno and Schwarzenegger and as a kid, you're 10, 11, 12 years old, you're seeing these hulking muscular people. You're like, oh my God, like I need to be bigger. I need to be stronger. I need to eat more. Right. I mean, that was just like, I remember being a kid thinking that. And so the first thing I thought when I was getting bullied is, I was thinking about karate and all those Bruce Lee things, but I was also thinking like, I just need to eat more and lift more weights. So I started lifting heavy, and then that continued into high school and into college. And so that really started, I was like, I need to get bigger. And so I was lifting heavy. I remember I'm going to brag here for a second, but I was so strong at one point that I would take 135 pounds. This is a lot for back then, for 1992 or 1993. I used to take 135 pounds. I weighed 165, 167. I used to take 135 pounds around my waist, and I would bang out like 14, 15, 16 dips. And I would go to 90. So I'm doing not quite my body weight. I'm not 2x my body weight, but my body weight plus 80%, which is a lot, and banging that out for 14, 15, 16 reps. And I wanted the power. I had the bigger trap. So I wanted that. I'm a big fan, Noah, of being strong in jiu-jitsu. I know I hear people say technique conquers all, and I'm all for being a technician. But I tell you, man, I like, if I could have, 5 superpowers in jiu-jitsu, one of them would be to be really like crazy strong, like just so much stronger than everybody else. I always say, like, if you came into a jiu-jitsu mat and you saw me rolling with someone who's say, I'm 137, 138 pounds, sometimes 140. But if I was rolling with someone who's 110 pounds and you watched me, you would think I was Marcelo Garcia. You'd be like, oh my God, look at Frank's doing all these arm bars in this exotic move. And it's like your jiu-jitsu IQ goes up when you're so much stronger than everybody else. Your jiu-jitsu just gets better. You're like, wow, I'm doing a lot of whatever I want. When you have somebody who matches your power and they match your skill, a lot of times those wind up being really boring matches, right? You watch some of the best in the world. They're both really strong. They're fast. They're smart. They got good technique. And some of the most boring matches in the world proceed to unfold. And you're like, do these guys know any jiu-jitsu? How come nobody's doing anything? You're watching the match for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Like a whole lot of nothing has happened, right? You used to watch UFC fights. If Dana White wasn't holding fighters' feet to the fire, there'd be a lot of boring fights. There's not boring fights because Dana and Sean Shelby and the old Joe Silva and, fighters, know like my UFC longevity depends upon like me also being exciting and me getting after it. And Dana's always preaching that and pounding that in. If he wasn't, there'd be a lot of boring fights. And, you'd be like, are these fighters any good? You see phenomenal fighters be like, that was the most boring thing ever.
Yeah.
Because they kind of cancel each other out. when one fighter is a lot faster and stronger and more technical, it's usually a blowout. It's usually a blowout, right? It's like, oh my God, it's called an annihilation. So I'm a big fan of physical power. My thing is, at my age, I just turned 49 yesterday. So you and I,
That's right. Happy birthday,
age.
Frank.
I feel
Happy
pretty
birthday.
good, but I don't want, at this point, and Tom Brady's been big on this a lot. Tom Brady's guru is Alex Guerrero, who's just brilliant and who's done a phenomenal job and went against the grain. He's done a phenomenal job keeping Brady age defying, and they just won that 7th Super Bowl. And he's said, one of the biggest parts of their protocol are the bands. They do a lot of the band work, and they do band work simulating. They can get all these different angles that translate into the kind of muscles and little mini muscles and ligaments and tendons that a quarterback needs. And they say that, that those bands can give a lot of times the power and the flexibility and the little mini muscles, and it does a great job of that without the load. It doesn't have the same load as a lot of heavy lifting. So that's Guerrero's philosophy. He knows a lot about it. He's been in that space a long time. And he's like, look, lifting all the heavy weight and the steel, that creates a lot more of what they call load on the muscles and strains of ligaments, tendons, and over time it can be a lot more degrading on the degrading on the muscles and the ligaments and everything. So I really do subscribe to that. I find myself doing more calisthenics, more band work, more pull-ups, more dips, more L-sits, which you and I talked about with Simon, the Simonster, when we had him on here, Simon Atta. That's not to say that heavy lifting isn't great. I think I know guys that are phenomenal and they heavy lift. I'm just saying for where I am. But the other thing, Noah, is there's different ways to get stronger. There's doing more repetitions in less time. It's not always just lifting heavy weights. It's the form. It's, hitting different muscles. It's holding the exercise, focusing more on the not just the concentric, but the eccentric, on the descent, on the decline. There's a lot of different moving pieces to gain that power. A lot of times it's just doing the technique right. Like I can do L-sits where my legs, if I'm not in good form, I can do the L-sits probably 2 or 3 times longer. My L-sit, like my crappy form L-sit, I can do it like 2 or 3x longer. When I do it properly, my goodness, it's probably like, it's not that long. You do start doing it right, and oh man, it's like, so it's a lot of times just getting stronger too is just like the form. Like if we swallow our ego and we're like, okay, if you do proper form, if you do pull-ups and you go all the way down and you pause for a second and then you go up, you're going to do at least probably half the pull-ups. You do them right. Oh my goodness. You emphasize the decline. Oh my goodness. Now, again, the human ego wants to do like, I want to do 25 pull-ups. It doesn't want to be like, I just did 10 or 11 pull-ups. For some reason, that hurts our ego. But the reality is 10 or 11 really good pull-ups probably made you stronger than 25 crappy, right? In general, 25 crappy, messy, ugly ones have their place too. They can help with fast twitch. It's not useless. You can still get pretty damn powerful. But we have to, it's learning to be smarter, realize, wow, if you get really good form on something, a lot of times when you look at the numbers, you're like, oh my God, you're not throwing around near as much weight. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, can my ego handle that? But you're doing better form, even if you're using half the weights, like better form, you're still getting the growth gains, you're still getting the strength, but you're getting less load on the ligaments, on the tendons. So less punishment, less long-term degradation. So anyway, that's where I am with my life. Is I do still like to lift steel sometimes, but I definitely use different weight. I definitely am more conscious of the full range of motion, and I don't go to exhaustion, kind of like Firas Zahabi had talked about. I figured that one out a while ago. I don't go to exhaustion. I leave something in the tank. You have a more progressive long-term look of getting stronger rather than I need to max today. Maxing today is going to risk an intermediate or a serious injury that's going to keep me off the mat, that's going to nag me, that's going to send me to the doctor, it's going to distract me from work. I'm not a big fan of maxing today. It's been a long time since I've done that.
Well, let me tee off on that right there. Where you say maxing out. I've asked Renzo a few times about how you approach the mats with regard to sparring, and my basic. I've said this before on this podcast, and I think it's worth just relating here again. If I had to choose between doing 100% maximal effort in my sparring game versus and that level of effort versus working at 50 to 70% within that range of my maximal effort on the mat. And when I'm talking about physical, Renzo says, I would rather you be here tomorrow and doing that 50 to 70% effort, physical effort, than to be doing that 100% and you get injured and you're out for 6 months.
Yep.
And it's just, that's just a philosophy that Renzo has.
His philosophy.
His last name is Gracie. Gracie's invented this sport. I think there's something to be said with, coming from the family.
Bruno Fernandez, who gave GSP his black belt, I read somewhere many years ago, it said the same thing. There were a lot of very smart people subscribe to that. And now, I mean, Noah, that's the problem with that is that sometimes this is where we have to be careful not to judge each other, is because we like sometimes when we judge others, sometimes we'll be like, if you're not going 100, sometimes a teammate or somebody who trains with you, or even a coach could be like, you're not going 110%, you're not killing it, you're not shark tanking it, so you're slacking. You're cheating yourself, you're cheating your training partners. And what's weird about that is that the reason that that's not a good way to think is that it pretends that, first of all, it assumes that I know what you've been doing all day. Like, I don't know. You could have spent the night at the hospital with your wife because she has whatever. I don't know. I don't know. You could have not been able to train for months because of whatever, or you could be nursing some injury that you don't want to hurt further, or there's a lot we don't know. We always just look at people and we think, well, I know, and I know that you have to do this, and like, sometimes it's not that people aren't brave. It's not that they're lazy. There is certainly that. We certainly see that. But there's other reasons. Sometimes it's that person was injured not long ago, and they've decided that, hey, I want to pull back because I love this so much. I want to be here, and I don't want to go pedal to the metal all the time, because if so, I'm going to get injured again, and then I might have to even quit this. I'm going to have another medical bill. And I've always said to people, and I'm going to repeat it again, I've always said, I know of no case, I know of no instance in the history of jiu-jitsu, in the history of wrestling, in the history of MMA, where one training partner hurt another and then said, hey, bro, I'll pay your medical bill. I don't know of one where somebody hurt someone and said, oh, I'll pay your medical bill. Oh, I tore your ACL or whatever, or slammed you, whatever. Oh, I'll pay that. I don't know of one. They're not going to pay. The odds are, if your training partner hurts you, as awesome as training partners can be, as much as we need our training partners, the odds are, if you get hurt, they're not even going to come visit you in hospital. If you were hospitalized for 5 days, they're probably not even coming to, talk about the lepers, right? The 1 in 10 lepers who said thank you. Yeah. It's like, your training partner's probably not coming to see you. They might send you a text or something. They're not even going to come see you. So you're responsible. So it's like, if you know that you're a person, your heart. If you know that you're brave and you love jiu-jitsu and you're working hard, sometimes you can measure hard work, everything too, by who's showing up. Like, who's showing up is a form of hard work. It's not the hardest work. I'm not saying you can show up and not be getting better and not be maximizing it, and you can show up and go through the motions. But to keep showing up is a form of hard work, that commitment, because it's not easy to show up a lot. It's not hard. It's not easy to just keep showing up. It's not easy to keep showing up over a 10-year period or 15-year period, 20 period. So if you're playing the long game, especially when you're like me and you're getting older. I mean, there's going to have to be days where you're just like, I know going into the gym, I'm like, I cannot go 100%. Most days are those days. And I don't want somebody else who's half my age or 20 and hasn't had the injuries like, oh, you don't train hard. You don't work hard. I'm thinking, bro, you didn't see the 34 years previous, did you? Like you can't rewind the tape, right? So you just have to, at some point, you just have to know in your own heart without trying to impress everybody. Like, look, I know where I am in my life. I know I love this. I know I'm reasonably brave. I know I'll put the work in, but I'm not going to die on this hill today in practice. This hill's not worth dying on today. I want to get better. I'm here, but I'm not here to die on this hill today in practice. I'm not here to blow my knee and like maybe end my career today. I'm not here to take any risk that would risk that. Like I'm here to lower that risk of that happening. And that means know thyself. You know where your body is. You know if your back's been killing you. You know if your hamstring's been tight. You know if you didn't get much sleep the night before. If you didn't, you damn sure shouldn't go in there and be going really hard. If you didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, just that too. You didn't get a lot of sleep. You didn't get to drink 10, 11, 15 glasses of water. You had to skip meals yesterday. You were at the hospital with your wife. You can go train. But bro, I wouldn't advise you, especially if you're over 30, I wouldn't advise you to go in there and really, really, really get after it. You can show up, but be really careful. Like be in it, like you're saying, more for the technical train, or know who you're going with, and know some people you might have to be more defensive. Some people you might have to just be like, I'm gonna have to defend more against this guy because if I really try to get after it or whatever, they're going to take my arm home with them, whatever. I mean, there's people you train with like that. It's like, look, this guy, when he arm bars you, he's going to arm bar you really hard. So I'm going to be a little more defensive against that guy because I don't say, well, oh man, you didn't open up as much. He goes, yeah, I don't want the guy to take my arm home with him. Yeah. I mean, that's human nature, right? I mean, so we're talking about the other 98%. No, we're not talking about the top 1 or 2 or 3%. That's great. Okay, and I've been in that percent at one time. I was in that percent. But we're talking about the 98%. We're talking about the 50th percentile, the 60th percentile, the 20th percentile. It's like, yeah, you gotta live to fight another day. And so the advice that Renzo gave you is great advice. The advice I'm saying is good advice. The advice Bruno Fernandez gave for most people, not for everybody. If you want to be an ADCC champion and you're 20 years old or something, different. But for the vast majority of us, at least, that's damn good advice.
But there's the psychological, or let me just say the neuroscience part of that advice. I want to say something about that. The neuroscience aspect of it is when I'm on the mat that frequently, I'm getting it. I start dreaming. I dream in Portuguese. But I also start to dream in jujitsu. It just by every day having that intensity. It's intensity, but having that daily dose of intensity of those movements that creates. There's a little physiological thing that's going on with your brain, and it creates myelin. Myelin is like insulation around your nerves, and it serves to we're talking about that where your brain has those like expressways for how you do things. As soon as you feel like, oh, I can transition right into an arm bar or a head and arm choke, you start to see that. You see that your brain sees that, and you know it before you really know it. And that just comes from that daily dose of getting on the mats and moving around, moving your hips, moving your body. That's the slow years long practice or effort to shape you from a block of marble to a black belt. Is that, to me, at least my opinion, is you just got to have that daily. You just got to go to church every day. You got to go hit that every day. And so it's just such a part of you that you don't think any other way. Anyways, Adolfo Vieira, in his most recent fight, gassed out. And, it was a scandal, essentially, with this fighter. I first saw him in 2012 at at a mat at a competition.
Are you talking about his most recent UFC fight?
Yes, yeah. His most recent UFC fight, he gassed out, and it was just scandalous how he gassed out. So a big, strong guy like that, and I saw him. In 2012. He was a big guy, and he got even bigger. And I don't know all that was going on with him. I went onto his Instagram feed to try to see if there's anything there, and he didn't, or at least I didn't come away with a solid explanation. But having these huge muscles, there is a cost to it, to carrying that much meat around, in the octagon. So I've been thinking more of, well, I need to, I lift weights and that's great, but I also need to take care of, I need to take care of my heart and lungs, especially looking and see what COVID has done to so many people with heart and lung weakness. So anyways, just to come full circle with the triathlon training, that's kind of my thought process is.
Let me talk about Adolfo, because I wanted to talk about this for a long time on our show. It's
okay.
serendipitous. It's serendipitous and synchronicitous that you mentioned that, because
okay.
I didn't get to talk about that. And I want to talk about what the collection of factors that probably caused this world-class athlete, this world champion, the guy's phenomenal, to get tapped by basically a blue belt who's not even like, when we talk about blue belt, we're talking about the guy that he lost to he's not like even a world-class blue belt. Like, it might make sense to me if it was like, a world-class blue belt. This guy's, a good, tough UFC fighter, hard-nosed, but he's nothing special in jiu-jitsu in terms of jiu-jitsu achievement, okay? So how did that happen? Because that's one of those like one in a million things that happen. That's just not supposed to happen.
Right.
We've seen black belts get tapped in the UFC, but they're usually not like that, Mount Kilimanjaro level of black belt, right? So let's peel back some of the layers there.
I just knocked over my water. Sorry about that.
Noah, is yeah.
Good.
One thing we don't know is we don't know what Adolfo Vieira's weight cut was like. That's one thing I would like to know. I would like to know more about his weight cut, because that's where we really would want to start, is not just his weight cut, but the fight week leading up to that in terms of how that weight cut was going. So that's one big thing. How was that weight cut? How were his efforts to rehydrate after the weight cut? That is huge. That's something that could be a big factor in this, that he had trouble with the weight cut, that he had trouble rehydrating before the fight. Because even though that sounds like easy, make the weight, rehydrate, it's tricky. And a lot of fighters, even at the high level, they mess that up, especially when they're not wrestlers. When they're not American wrestlers, a lot of people mess that up. So the weight cut and the rehydration could have played into him being gassed. In addition, like you said, this is a guy with a lot of muscle density. He's got kind of that body build. When we see guys like that just have that vascularity and that, oh my God, just like an Adonis, like a sculpted body, when we see that, they usually don't hold up as well in the cardiovascular tank. You don't see a lot of 25-minute thrillers, right? 5-round thrillers, like back and forth with guys built like that. And we just don't. I mean, just anecdotally, we just don't see that body type in these all-out 25-minute wars. So that body type may have had something to do with it too. The other thing is, a lot of times when you have great cardiovascular output, a lot of times you have great cardiovascular output where you're strongest. But where you're weakest, you're less efficient. So if you're a grappler, let's just say you're a grappler per se, you're more of a grappler than a striker. When you get dragged into a striking match, you're not nearly as efficient. Your technique's not nearly as efficient. You're not nearly as comfortable. So your breathing is up more, you're not as efficient. So you waste more energy. So that, if a guy like Adolfo being dragged into a striking fight, it's like, okay, he's got to spend a lot of times a lot more energy. He's out of his element against a guy who's a better striker. So he's got to spend more energy. Then when he gets hit by the other guy, a lot of times when you're getting hit and you're taking punishment, in addition to being wobbly, the fight or flight kicks in. There's more of a drain on the cortisol, on the adrenals, and that can make you tired too. When you get hurt, when fighters get hurt, that usually can create a surge of cortisol, of the hormones and the adrenals. So this collection of things, I mean, let's be clear here. As impressive as it was for that guy to tap Adolfo, I mean, that's just something we'll never forget. But let's be clear. If those guys train 100 times in practice, I'm going to put my money on Adolfo Vieira. The next day, rehydrated Adolfo, I'll put on my money on him 100 out of 100 to win every grappling match. If they went to ADCC or any other rules, IBJJF, I would put my money 100 out of 100 on Adolfo under grappling rules. But when you factor in the MMA aspect of it and the hydration and the weight cutting and Adolfo being dragged into a stand-up fight and being hurt, hey, man, there you go. Welcome to MMA. It's not jiu-jitsu, right? There's the face punch aspect, and anything can happen. That's the amazing thing about that octagon. Anything can happen. And I think that's part of what keeps us coming back as fans, Noah, because just when you think you've seen it all, Anthony Pettis does something crazy. There's some last minute knockout. There's blue belts tapping world champion black belts. Like, it's a crazy sport. There's Chris Weidman, wow. God bless him. I hope he's doing well out there. Renzo Gracie, whatever, there's Chris Weidman with that really nasty tear, which ironically is very, very similar to the Anderson Silva's. You can't make this stuff up. It's a crazy sport. We think we've seen it all, but that was something that, again, it's at the end of the day, the one thing we know is this is a really hard sport. Jiu-jitsu at the high levels is really hard. Cage fighting is really hard, man. I don't care how good you are, how tough you are, how accomplished you are at whatever individual art or combat discipline. It's really hard, man. There's a lot that can go wrong even before you come in that octagon. Just your weight cut, just your mind getting the better of you, the monkey mind, just your fears, just, a COVID test, just whatever, man. There's all kinds of stuff. It's one of the hardest sports out there. It might be the hardest sport. So that's why sometimes when we sit here and break this stuff down, sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, well, damn, I never made that walk, right? I've been in fights, I've been in sparring sessions. I've never made that walk. And sometimes I feel bad armchair quarterback in that, because it's easy to do that. But what I do know is, damn, it's a hard sport and anything can happen. And, it's easy to sit here and be like, why did that guy get tired in 4 minutes?
Yeah. I wanted to go
I would
back.
say most people out there have probably never had like a 5-minute grappling match in their life, Noah. Think about that. Wrap your brain around that. Most Americans, like if you take everybody and you say how many people out there have even grappled or wrestled someone in, for 5 minutes. I mean, most people probably never have. It's a foreign feeling. They have no clue. Like, if you wrestled someone for 2 minutes, somebody who's good and strong, like, it would blow most people's mind. Like, how tired can you get in 2 minutes, 3 minutes wrestling with somebody hard?
Right. They say that.
Really, really, like as tired as you could if you ran around a track at 400 meters. If you ran, that's what I would say to people. Go find a track. Don't do this if you're out of shape and but go find a track, run 400 meters around it as hard as you can. And then you'll kind of realize how tired you can get in a fight or in a really intense jiu-jitsu session. Go do that.
Well, you know what
idea.
The way I think about it is get on your hands and knees on a beach. Have a 40-pound sandbag on your back. Now go as fast as you can for 30 seconds running across that beach. You know, that's the experience.
Sí, hermano.
You know, that's the experience. Is if you were to go on a beach and do a bear crawl with a 40-pound sandbag on your back, go as fast, max effort for 30 seconds. Go. You run in turtle races. I might be expressing a little bit of what we did in Marine Corps, but
well, if you get people who just go to a punching bag, right? If you get people who just go to a punching bag and they punch that punching bag, you know, most people should not do this, by the way, because they're going to get themselves hurt. Their muscles and their ligaments are not prepared for it. But let's say, you know, you worked up to it. If people punched a punching bag as hard as they could for 3 minutes, and it's not even punching back, right? There's no fight or flight. Usually, I mean, people get exhausted just punching a punching bag as hard as you could for 3 minutes. And that's nowhere near a real fight or tournament jiu-jitsu. That doesn't even compare. And most people would be gassed if they really punched a punching bag as hard as they could for 3 minutes. They'd be gassed. And that doesn't compare to an intense training session or a competition jiu-jitsu match or a real fight or an intense sparring session. It has no comparison.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, you know, the thing is, sometimes when you have those, you know, the thing is when you go to the tournament and you were nervous, or you go to the training session and it did push you, this is such a great feeling. It's just such a great feeling to be like, all the fears and all whatever it was that was on your mind, that was worrying you, that scared you, and then to come out the other side and you're like, I'm in one piece, and you know, I was able to win, or I was able to perform well. It's I mean, it's just priceless. That's it. I mean, like, or you train with someone, you're like, you know, maybe they're a black belt or they're a big name, and you're actually, you know, you're scared, and then you roll with them and you realize after the roll, you're like, oh my God, I learned so much, and that was great. And I thought that was going to be horrible, or I thought I was going to get hurt, or I thought they were going to do this, and then they didn't. And it was actually a great experience. Those are very fulfilling moments in this sport. When you thought of the worst, when you were afraid, when you were hesitant, and then when you actually go through it, you're like, why was I thinking that? Like, why was I like so worried about that? Why was I so like, that was awesome. I learned a lot. Like, I'm fine, you know? And like, it really is like a lot of the world, Noah, a lot of what scares us, it's true. Most of what scares us are just paper tigers. There's not an actual tiger in front of us. It's just, it's writing we've got a tiger on a piece of paper and we're terrified. It's not even a real tiger. Like, if a real tiger is in front of you, then be scared and deal with the tiger. But most of the tigers we're scared of, they're paper tigers. We're never going to see them. We're never going to meet them. They just simply live in our head. And we just give this phantom tiger, it's like, you know, it's like people who think that they're, you know, being held back, or they can't do it. And it's like, there's no shackles on them. The only shackles are psychological. There's no actual shackles stopping them. But they act like there are, right? They act like they've been shackled to something, and I can't do that, and I can't do that, and I can never do that. And it's like, I got news for you. There's no shackle on you. There's no ball and chain. There's no handcuffs on you. Like, you can do a lot, you know. And that's what fear is. Fear is this. It's most of the fear is just imagination. That's all it is. And most of it's just imagination. And when you get out there, that's why. It's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. That's the beauty of training, is if you're in the right environment, I mean, pick the right gym, but you pick the right gym that's right for you, the people that you trust, that you get along with, that are going to be considerate about your body, that'll invest in you, that are legit. it's a growth facilitator like few others. There's few places on the planet that are going to do that good of a job at people building. I believe that.
Frank, what I do is, when I'm going, the feeling I get when I go into Henzo's is, well, in the beginning, when I was a white belt, very beginning when I was a white belt, I had a lot of anticipation, a lot of anxiety about going in. After a while, I started to associate the feeling that I had when I left the academy at the end of the night after training with going in. So I would, in my mind, I would go, think about all the good feelings and the friendships you're making, and enjoying time and not having to worry about other things. This is a time for myself. It's like if you ever go in and get a massage or something, this is time for yourself, and it's time for you to share an experience with others, and relate with others, and do something that other people are there that are interested, just as interested, if not more, than you are. So I don't have that. I don't have that experience of fear or anxiety when I go train jits. I have, because to me it's not a competition when I'm there. It's just play. It's just play with padded walls, and we wear pajamas there. I mean, it's, to me it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go hang out with my friends, and we're gonna do this, and this is what we all like to do. We have it in common, and sometimes you build lifelong friendships out of it. So that's what I get out of Henzo's there in New York. Am I missing that? Quite a bit. I'm missing the fellowship. I'm missing, walking out of there, seeing Lewis mopping the floors, and I'm like, everyone's gone. You've showered. The place is calm, and I get to walk back to my apartment in Midtown. I miss that a lot, and what we do also at Henzo's, we do that, and not all gyms do this, but after training, we go around and we hug each other. It's just that one arm, shake, is that shake, deep, deep one arm hug, and just the next person. We all do that at Henzo's. And you get to meet people on the line there. Whenever there's like 60 people in the line, you get to meet people that you didn't get to roll with, and you get to just say, "Hey, nice to see you. Let's try to roll. Let's try to catch up next time." So it's a lot. I guess I'm missing a lot of Henzo's, which is quite different than like an endurance sport. Like when I'm talking about training for triathlon, because it's just you alone on the bike, in the pool, or out for a run. And you could take someone with you, but for the most part, that's a solo. That's an experience that you're alone doing, and I think that's what makes it unique about the sport. But anyways, hey, let's go and celebrate the rest of Mother's Day Sunday. The weather's nice. It's getting kind of hot, but it's still not that hot, but it's pretty hot already here in Vegas.
I was outside, Noah. I was outside for 3 hours today in intense Vegas sun. This is how my skin is. I'm not burned. I'm not nothing. I was out there for 3 hours on the bike, no shirt.
Wow.
I'm a freak, man. That vitamin D, that melanin. Yeah. But yeah, let's go pay the moms some homage. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Thank you so much, even to all the women pioneers, female pioneers in the fight sports, doing amazing things. We appreciate you, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see that these sports are growing, and they're inclusive, man. They're including every race, every religion, man, woman. I mean, everybody's included, and it's as inclusive as a sport as anything out there. It really is. Like it's setting the bar for, like, you see, men and women making each other better, training together. You don't see that. I mean, NFL doesn't have any, there's no women players right now. We've got everything. So anyway, happy Mother's Day to everybody out there, and the Misha Tates of the world, the Michelle Wattersons, the Mackenzie Derns, who are having kids and then going and fighting. That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing to do that. So Noah, you have a great rest of the day. It's always been a pleasure. And we will be talking soon. Thank you for a great episode, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you today. Next time we sit down with each other, I have you see me over here drinking a lot of water. I have some questions for you about water next time. And so I want to give you a little heads up. You can take a big old swig, because I've heard something that's caught my attention, and I'm like, is that for real? And I want to just get your data download on water. There's pH levels, and then there's water from the tap, and filtration, and spring water. I don't know all. I don't have the time to research all this, but I would like to hear from you, because you're a connoisseur of all things health related, and so I want to extract from you some of that knowledge that you have. I've also been seeing research studies coming out about CBD and all that, and I don't know much about that either. And so want to pick your brain and see, and learn from you, because you have a lot of knowledge. You spent a long time studying these things. So part of the podcast here is jiu-jitsu related, but I want to keep learning and growing, but I don't necessarily have the time to research and just chase down everything. And it's good just to, for me, I listen to a lot of podcasts, I get a lot of information, and I'm like, oh, that sounds woo, that sounds BS. Where's my evidence? Show me the data. So I want to ask you if you have some time this week, if you have any notes that you could pull together that we can talk about water. And it may be another one on what your knowledge about is using CBD. I know Enzo's come out with his own brand now, and Master Enzo's come out with this. There's got to be something to it, because I worship Enzo. He's a phenomenal human being. He's still human,
Mm-hmm.
But I want to pick your brain on some stuff here. And as another thing I wanted to ask down the line as well, and that's about dental health, and protecting the mouth when you're training jits. I've thankfully not had many injuries.
I've had 5 chipped teeth, so I know all about that one.
Yeah, stuff like that, jaw injuries, gum, and the importance of flossing and dental care. It's just all these basic things that goes into your maintenance program as a jiu-jitsu athlete. These are all important stuff. All right. So anyways, thank you again. Let's bounce out of here, and I look forward to talking to you again Sunday. As we say every week, Everyman BJJ podcast, we're about this, this is about the sport, athlete, things related to it. We pull in a lot of information, pull in from Frank's deep knowledge. And we try to hit the air every Sunday, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. And this has been another great episode. Appreciate it, Frank, and I will talk to you again later.